This is Fierce Fighters, and it might just seem like an ordinary card game, but in this video, I'm gonna explain what makes it special. And it's not because of its rules or mechanics, or the fact that it's the most unpopular card game in the world, but it's because of the backstory. For this, we'll have to go back 3 years when it all started. One day I was bored and decided to create a card game where you fight characters to death. I came up with some pretty crazy ideas like a Stingray Scorpion and the Dragon Alligator hybrid, and I was no pro artist at the time. I simply drew them on index cards and called it a game. After making a whole 10 cards, well, I just stopped making the game. This seemed like another project I started but immediately stopped and never came back to. Like one of these old books I made where the story just randomly cuts out. But surprisingly enough, half a year later, I came back to it and made a bunch of cards. The main motivation was that me and my friends would play these games sometimes, and it would be pretty fun. So I kept on making the card game until I started to run out of ideas. It got to the point where I made a character that was a big blob of goo, and this weird polar bear who has like some extra horns. I named him Flip-Op. What was I thinking? So then I decided to make a book explaining all the characters, and this guidebook took so long to make. Like, it was so precious to me. Like, I was gonna cry if one of the pages got bent. But after a while, the Fierce Fighters guidebook was done. Next up, I made a book where I went in depth on the bigger characters of the game, including characters like Killbot, a lab-developed robot to protect humans, and characters like Superstyle, who protect the universe from evil threats like Quasis and Polestar. And I was still making new cards for the game and adding new characters. After I finished the World of Fierce Fighters, I made the second guidebook where I explained the new characters I added. And Fierce Fighters was the furthest one of my childhood projects has gone. I was creating books and lore for the game. I even made this little puzzle for the game, which, fun fact, was the first colored Fierce Fighters thing to exist. I even made Fierce Fighters Pocket Edition, where I remade a bunch of the cards on smaller index cards. This made it feel more like a real card game, and I liked it a lot. But sometimes I'd randomly imagine how amazing it would be if the Fierce Fighters cards had full color. I would just wonder, how would it look, and how cool would it be? It seemed like a pipe dream for Fierce Fighters to be a thing. I started making the first Fierce Fighters storybook, Intergalactic Battles. It was about a Galax stealing a crown and turning into King Galax. I won't spoil the rest, because this will be an upcoming book actually. But this was the time where things started to come to an end. I started to lose motivation to make the story. It felt kind of stressful. If I spelled something wrong, I had to rewrite a whole paragraph. And unfortunately, I dropped making the story, and I dropped making new cards. Over the next year, I focused on some other projects, and there the poor Fierce Fighters universe was sitting in a green box on a shelf in my room. Every so often, I'd go to that green box and look back at some of the stuff, feeling nostalgia, and it honestly made me feel kind of sad that I abandoned it. But one time I looked back, and I decided I can't let all these ideas go to waste. So I decided to hop on my computer and make the first real art for a Fierce Fighters card. And yeah, I used Paint 3D on my computer to make this. It ended up looking alright, but it took me an hour and a half to make, and I still had no idea where I was gonna do the card stats and stuff. And then I just forgot about making Fierce Fighters cards. With my amateur 3D modeling skills, it was way too hard to make these characters, and they were all gonna look bad. I searched up 3D modeling tutorials for better things, but they're all way too complicated. So yeah, I quit. And then about 8 months later, the same thing happened. I looked back at my green box and got nostalgia and inspiration to make the game. So I got on my phone and I made this. Yeah, at the time I actually thought that was pretty good. What an amazing drawing of Superstyle. What other amazing drawings could I make on my phone like that? Well, none, because I decided to spend a bunch of money getting an iPad and an Apple Pencil. And oh my god, thank goodness I switched to this. Imagine if Fierce Fighters just ended up with everyone looking like this. So I decided I was gonna finally commit to doing something really big in my life. And I had no idea how long this would take, but the nostalgia fueled my motivation. I decided I was gonna transform all 210 Fierce Fighters cards. So I drew all the templates for the cards, and they ended up looking pretty nice. Even with how new I was to the software, the backgrounds actually looked pretty good. And I was actually super careful with the card templates. I knew it was really important how these would look, because it would be used for every card in the future. And I thank my old self for being so cautious while making those. For being new to that, it could have been a lot worse, except for the level boxes. Like, why did I make those so big? But eventually I had all the card templates ready, and it was time to start making my dream card game. And I present to you the first Fierce Fighters card ever made. Well, Journey of 1,000 Miles starts with the first step, and this was the first step. Next up I made Chompy, which looked better than Bite. And then I made Chompster, who looked better than Chompy. And then I made Super Chompster, which didn't really look better than Chompster. But like many stories you hear, I just got better with progress. I mean, how else would my drawings get better? And I just started grinding out more Fierce Fighters drawings. Some of them looked pretty bad, but then some of them looked pretty good. At first I just drew whichever cards I chose. And believe it or not, I'd always save the harder ones for last. So I decided to sort out the old paper drawings and make an order that I have to do them in. So now I couldn't push back Ultra Baltron and do someone simple like Balloon instead. I had to do whatever card was next. And the first cards that I made that I was really satisfied with were these 4 cards. This was the first time I really loved one of the cards I made, even though these Baltron ones aren't actually that good and the new ones are way better. I was so happy with it, I decided to hang them on my wall, just so I could see the beauty of Stellar and Quasis and Baltrons at all times. And let's not forget about Super Orbisar too. So I ended up committing to making 2 cards a day. It took time, but it usually didn't take much over an hour, and I kept up with the grind. Some cards were harder than others, and then after some time, I got the first test print. That's right, here are the first printed ever Fierce Fighters cards. And you could definitely spot the differences. Yeah, and there were some problems with these. Like, you can't even read that says Ultra. I spelled damage like scammed? Can you even see anything here? Despite all the problems, I couldn't stop staring at these cards. It was so cool to see these printed and finally in color. But there were still some adjustments to make them perfect. And from there on, things went pretty smoothly. I was able to keep up with making 2 cards a day. Some days I'd even do more if I felt like it. And finally, after 5 months, there was 1 card left. It was King Polestar. Fun fact, King Polestar and King Orbistar were the only 2 cards that there were no old drawings of. But I decided to add them because King Galax was the only King card I ever made before. But anyways, King Polestar was a great way to end because it was my favorite looking card possibly. But this wasn't it. There were still adjustments that needed to be made on all 210 cards. So each day I kept up with fixing about 10 cards. I'd make some of the text smaller and most importantly add lighting to the characters to make things look better. And some other small details I don't remember. But it was actually quite a bit that I had to do. And after about half a year since I made Bite, well, it was finally finished. My childhood dream had come true. It was so amazing to see the cards exist that I dreamed of. It's always really special to see the result of something you worked so hard for. And there was nothing like looking through that deck of cards. And I was really satisfied with how these turned out. And even in the time I waited for the cards to be printed, I made a whole Fierce Fighters book. This just added to the excitement. But there was one unfinished task. And this was a really big task. Something I was getting into that I had no idea what to do. If I complete this task, it would finish my dream. And it was to make this card game for sale. So this meant I had to completely figure out how to build a shop website and run it. And yeah, the process was pretty boring, so I'm not going to go into detail. But I got this printer ready, and I started printing so many packs of this. And the cool thing about Fierce Fighters is every single pack is handmade by me. Yeah, I mean, what do you expect? Do you think I own a $10,000 machine that can make these automatically? But believe it or not, I actually enjoyed making these packs. It's actually kind of fun, even though it seems pretty boring. There's just something special about it. But after getting a bunch of packs ready and figuring out, business stuff, and after nearly 2 months of figuring this out, the first 1,500 Fierce Fighters cards arrived. And this was so exciting. I actually made a whole video on unpacking that. That video will be clickable right here. So I sorted out all those cards and used my pre-prepared booster packs to package them into. And the next day, I already packaged all the cards. There was 100 packs ready to go. So this was it. All I had left to do was launch the store. And then I did it. Fierce Fighters was officially born. July 16th, the birthday of Fearless Fighters. I'll always remember that day. It's gonna be a holiday for me, and I've done it. I've created my dream card game, and it's now for sale, and anybody can buy it. And of course, if you want to get yourself a pack, the link to the website will be linked in the pinned comment. But I did it. But there's still a lot left to do. For starters, it's the fact that no one knows this game exists. This will probably be the hardest part. Getting people to know Fierce Fighters exists, which is what I'm attempting to do right now, making this video. And this will be tough, but I'll keep on trying. And I also made a Discord server for Fierce Fighters. If you care about Fierce Fighters, well, I suggest you join it. It's pretty important. And I'll be really engaged with the community there because, well, the server's really dead. I host challenges all the time there of drawing. I'll start doing giveaways. I also made this thing called the Fierce Fighters radio station where I talk to y'all live. Yeah, I feel like I had some pretty cool stuff there, but the server's really dead. And that concludes the video. In the meantime, I'll keep packaging and shipping y'all's orders. I'm also working on getting the book for sale too. I also want to start working on some books, like a Fierce Fighters collector's guide, and maybe a book that gives you different ways you can play Fierce Fighters. If y'all think I should make those, let me know in the comments. I think those would be pretty fun to make actually, and I really hope y'all enjoyed playing Fierce Fighters. I worked really hard on it. It would be a huge dream come true if it got popular. And see y'all next time. I'll keep y'all updated a lot on my Discord server and also here on YouTube. And can you spot the hidden video link? First person to comment on that video gets this. Okay, bye.